Well, welcome everyone and good morning or good afternoon, dependent on where you are. Today's session is around preparing for your FSM upgrade. So our agenda today will cover introductions and housekeeping, an Intellias overview, the what, the why, and the how of preparing for your FSM upgrade, the nuts and bolts. We'll end with questions and then conclude the webinar. So, with me today, we have Mike Beyer, who is an FSM principal consultant here at Intellias. Chandra also is from Intellias and joining us. And my name is Debbie Sherman. I am the FSM solution architect here at Intellias. As Chandra indicated, you can put your questions in the chat and we'll review those at the end of the webinar. Also look for us on YouTube and LinkedIn. All right, so a little bit about Intellias. We're headquartered in Dallas, Texas, and were established in 1999. We are an Infor Alliance partner. We offer consulting services for Infor loss and technical services, Infor loss and upgrades, Infor loss and application consulting, cloud services, and CloudSuite consulting. We also, all of a sudden I'm hearing an echo. We also offer some software offerings to assist with efficiencies in Lawson as well as in FSM. So to get us started, we have the what. Oh, and sorry, I thought we were, my apologies. There we go. The what, the why, and the how of preparing for our FSM upgrade. So the what. You have either made the decision or in the process of making the decision that it's time to upgrade from legacy Lawson or from another ERP system to Infor Financials and Supply Management. So today, if you have Lawson version 10, the new system is called Infor Financials and Supply Management. Now, there may be many different reasons why you are doing this. Change is progression. You're looking for application enhancements. New technology equals new opportunities, better performance for your system, definitely enhanced reporting, user-friendly functionality, and out with the old and in with the new. So how do we go about doing this? Well, you need to define your long-term roadmap, develop a plan, assign resources, and identify target dates, or basically a timeline. So in order to do that, your roadmap to success has to include a number of things. Those would be cleanup efforts around your legacy system and financials and supply chain data, taking the opportunity to redefine your organization, look at standardization and optimization, identify your biggest pain points, and what I like to call wish upon a star. What is it you would like your system to do? Take a look at conversion efforts and what's going to be required there. Third-party applications are what we call RICE, and we'll get more into that in a later slide. The roadmap, the plan, resources, and timeline. So let's start with cleanup efforts. So this is the perfect opportunity to scrub and cleanse your data, right? Anytime you start with something new, it's an opportunity to get rid of the stuff you no longer need. So from a financial perspective, if you're looking at your general ledger, which is now called the global ledger in the new version, you want to look at inactivating companies that you're no longer using. Also, departments or cost centers and accounts that have had no activity within the last year to 18 months. In cash management, inactivate any closed bank accounts and transaction codes that you are no longer using. If you are utilizing treasury and cash management or doing any type of bank statements, reconcile those timely. It's very important that you start off in the new system with good data, because remember, bad data in is going to be bad data out. From a payables perspective, you want to look at your vendors and inactivate or purge any vendors or vendor locations that have not had any activity in the last 12 to 18 months. You'll want to do the same if you're utilizing the one-time vendor functionality. You want to review statements and resolve any credit balances for invoices older than 12 months. You'll also want to take a look at your open payables for any items that have been sitting there for a very long time, looking at, again, things like credit balances or invoices that have strange dates, or invoices that may require some type of manual manipulation to correct them within the system. You'll want to review and resolve your invoice not received for invoices older than 6 months. So if you're a larger organization or even a smaller one, and you're utilizing the full suite of procure to pay, which is requisition to payment and payables, you'll want to take a look at that INR and work with your supply chain team to determine why these are not received. Was it simply missed? Is there an issue, etc.? So very important there to make sure that's up to date and you know exactly what data you're dealing with. From a receivables perspective, you're going to want to resolve age invoices over a year by increasing your collection efforts and performing write-offs if you can. Much like you do for payables with vendors, you're going to want to take a look at your customers and inactivate those that have no balance and no activity within the last year. And then take a look at your received not applied. Get that cleaned up, right? So payables and receivables have some of the same actions, although on the opposite sides, right? So you want to make sure you're looking at all of that information and making sure it's as up to date and complete and correct as possible. From an activity perspective, so activities in the legacy Lawson version will become projects in the new version. You're going to want to review expired projects and get those closed. And review projects with no activity in the last 6 to 12 months. Now, your independent organization may want to flex these dates. You may want to push this to 9 months and 18 months, and that's fine. But the idea is you're going to want to review this data for accuracy and to make sure you have good data that you're passing into your new system, regardless of what ERP you do upgrade to. So for assets, you'll want to perform an inventory to ensure that the assets you are recording are truly assets you own and are within your organization. And then you're also going to want to look at disposals. This is a great time to dispose of those assets that you no longer have value to the company. From a supply chain perspective, you want to look at requisitions. Review anything that's unapproved and unreleased and resolve those. Get rid of them, pass them along, do whatever you need to. For purchase orders, take a look at the open PO lines that are older than 6 months. Work with AP to determine were those paid as a non-PO invoice. If they were, then resolve them. Close that line, make a note, get it off the books. And take a look at unreleased receipts that are older than 30 days. Now, the other side of this is that in payables, you're looking at your invoice not received. On the purchase order side, you have that received not invoiced. So those go hand in hand, right? You'll want to take a look at those receipts, determine why they've not been matched to invoices. And again, was that paid as a non-PO invoice? For your item master, review and inactivate duplicate items or items that have had no activity for a specified amount of time. For inventory transactions, review unreleased inventory transactions that are more than 90 days old. For contracts, review expired contracts. Do those need to be resolved? Have you extended that contract? Does it truly need to be closed? For purchasing and ship to locations, you'll want to inactivate locations that are no longer valid or in use. And then I kind of skipped ahead here, but here's your R&I, the receive not invoice. And collaborate with accounts payable to get those items resolved. This is also a really good time to review your approval processes for both finance and supply chain. Many organizations have different approval processes between finance, between payables, and between supply chain. Others follow the same levels of authority, but regardless of what your organization is doing, this is a great time to take a look at that. Determine, are they compliant with your current financial policies? Do your levels of authority need to change? Do they need to adapt with your growing organization? Now's the perfect time to determine what those changes should be. And here we are with RICE. So RICE is reports, interfaces, customizations, and extensions. What you want to do is document every single one of these. From a reporting perspective, we can determine out of Legacy Lawson what reports you are currently running today. But if you have crystal reports, LBI reports, customized reports, those all need to be cataloged. You need a running list of everything you're utilizing today. So inventory your reports and assign to them. You could have them, should have them, must have them, or no longer applicable, right? Provide samples of each of those reports, and it's always very helpful to your implementation partner to include the source, the owner, and the parameters. Because what your implementation partner is going to do is take a look at these reports and determine what tool will be used to replace that. We have sessions with you to talk through these reports. Because one thing I can tell you that I truly love about the new version, and I was a Lawson user for over 20 years, Mike as well. There are so many great options for running reports, right? Your standard canned reports have been replaced with what is called list views. And these list views give you hands-on accessibility to data within your system. Instead of a report you pull up with specific parameters, you have access to much more data, or to personalize those list views to get extra data you might want to see. So we, as implementation partners, or any implementation partner, will work with you to determine what will replace the reports you're utilizing today, because they're changing. The same with interfaces. Inventory your interfaces. Define their use, their need, and who owns them. Do you need them for the future? Can something better replace it? Customizations. Customizations are currently in Lawson today what you would do with a design studio or a paint screen. You've added user fields. You've required certain fields be filled out. You've hidden certain fields. These are all what we consider customizations. Inventory the customized forms and fields you currently have today. Once again, define their need, what they're used for, and who the owner is. This, you'd be surprised how many organizations don't realize how many reports, interfaces, customizations, or extensions they truly have. When they start to document them, then it all comes into that big picture. So this can be very helpful for not only your organization, but you may find some items that you didn't realize were out there that you no longer utilize, but you have a complete inventory of them. So from an extension perspective, these could be approval flows, any automations, or any Infor process automation flows you've created. Once again, these can be just sending data back and forth from one place to another, using VBA add-ins to help with an upload, something along those lines. Define their need. Again, what are you using them for, and who's the owner? And overall, you really just want to look at what do we absolutely need to keep or replace or even make better, and what needs to go away. In many cases, new functionality will replace an existing customization or extension. We find a lot of that, which is great. Provide design documents or flowcharts if you have them. The more information you provide and get ready for this upgrade, the better off you will be. So redefining your organization. As we said in the beginning, this is a great time for you to determine or to make those decisions around a reorganization. Did you recently buy a smaller company and you haven't really standardized them into your current processes? This is a great time to do that. It's a great time to really look at the financial structure of your organization and how you might want to change that. So today, you may be limited in how your financial hierarchies can be managed, but with the new version of FSM, there are so many opportunities to expand your general ledger code block. So today in Lawson, you have company, accounting unit, account, activity, and account category. In the new version, you have 14 options. So for many of you who have multiple companies and locations with each of those, you've had to figure out either how to include those into your accounting units or accounts. That goes away. You actually can identify these by location, and this gives you that granular level of reporting and being able to identify expenses at the exact level that they're happening. So by utilizing those extended, what we call financial dimensions. So your code block, again, consists today of company, accounting unit, you may call it cost center department, and account, activity, account category. You can then incorporate locations, service lines, if you're in the healthcare industry, providers, trading partners, payers, cost objects, if you're retail. There are many, many options we can utilize for just that purpose. There's also flexibility with reporting. So in the new world, you have the opportunity to create what's called alternate charts and hierarchies to report the same information from your master data in multiple different ways. For instance, if you're a healthcare organization, you can report Medicare separately from the rest of your expenses. If you do something in the utilities or your transportation provider, we can do the same thing. There's different reports like FERC and different transportation reports that are required that you cannot report all expenses on. So we can develop and create those hierarchies in the new version to allow for the exclusion or inclusion of only certain cost centers, companies, accounts, projects, etc. So there's so much flexibility in this area. This is also a good time to re-engineer your chart of accounts. Are you using sub-accounts today? Is that something you want to move forward with? Is it really the most effective way to identify expenses, especially given you have additional dimensions or pieces of your GL distribution string that can be added? And standardizing across the organization. Again, if you've recently purchased a smaller company, if you have different lines of service or different lines of business, but want to bring those together into one financial structure, although retain reporting on them separately, you can still standardize. Everyone can still utilize the same chart of accounts, the same accounts within certain departments and etc. So just some of those things to think about. So standardization and optimization. Whether or not you decide to reorganize and that's in your future, it's still an optimal time to standardize and optimize processes. So here's some additional things to think about in that arena. Workflow approvals. Do you have them? Great. If you have them, can they be optimized? If you don't, consider implementing them and what the benefits are to your organization. Do you have multiple entities that handle approvals differently, or are there bottlenecks in the process? Those are prime opportunities to standardize, right? And of course, the benefits to putting workflow in, whether that's from a requisition side, from a journal entry approval side, or from payables, is that you have visibility to everything that's in the system, right? We still have many customers who do all their approvals outside of the system. But when you put that within the system you're working in, it helps with accruals. It helps with visibility of where things are, etc. Items do not get lost or misplaced. Our journal entries process consistently across the organization. Are you optimizing your cash flow and using the full capabilities of the system? I think cash management is probably one of the modules we do not see fully optimized. And there's many things you can do with it. The bank reconciliation program within the new system is phenomenal and can be very helpful to organizations. There are opportunities to standardize invoice and purchase order processing. Do you use imaging or OCR technology today? And I'm sure all of you know that OCR technology is that ability to scan an invoice. It indexes key points on those invoices, such as vendor, company, invoice number, invoice dates and amounts, taxes, etc. Always something good to do, especially if you're high volume. How are payments processed and printed today? Are you utilizing your bank to do this? Is it something that can be brought into house? Utilizing the system for receivables invoicing? Or are you doing this all through Excel? Well, consider uploads or out-of-the-box functionality to optimize that and once again, provide visibility to those miscellaneous receivables you may be sending out. What policies and procedures are in place to create assets? Is it different across companies or organizations? Do you have the proper tools to track and report your assets? Are projects used to their full potential? Keeping in mind that an activity in Lawson today becomes a project in the future. The enhanced project reporting that's in the FSM system allows the tracking of budget to expense, variances, as well as commitments and obligations. Do you use projects for assets, grants, restricted, non-restricted funds, special internal projects? If not, it's an ideal way to track this information. I always use an audit as an example. Your internal audit. You always like to track the expenses for an internal audit. That could be a special internal project. If you're a healthcare organization and you have a gala to raise money for one of your foundations, great way to track that information. So look at how you're using your projects and determine if you can make that process better. Are receiving processes up to par? What can be done to reduce your invoice not received and your received not invoiced? Are you interested in strategic sourcing or mobile supply chain? Both have come such a long way. Both can be a great optimization opportunity for organizations that utilize inventory and have high volumes. So again, overall, it's a great opportunity to implement procedures you've been putting off for a multitude of reasons, or have not had time and the resources to implement. All right, identify pain points and wish upon a star, right? So one of the most important considerations when you're getting ready to do an upgrade, regardless of what it is identifying what procedures you're doing today. So in your current day processes are causing you the most pain. What is cumbersome? What is tedious? What is duplicative, etc. You know, talk to your employees who are doing the work. Find out where are their major pain points. Looking at opportunities for making improvements in any of those areas can often result in increased productivity across an organization. We see it all the time. There's nothing better for a consultant than to, walk through discovery with them and give them an idea of how a process can be improved, and they're in awe. So through the discovery process with your implementation partner, questions will be designed around this. And we try to pull out from you while we're having these discussions what those pain points are, so we can document them and solution for them. So another very important thing to start thinking about is wish upon a star. That whole mentality. Make a list of everything you want, right? Ask for everything you want. Come to the table with everything. Vetting out all of these ideas can result in reducing manual efforts. And in some cases, and in a lot of cases actually, can be out of the box functionality that either you didn't know existed, your organization didn't have the time to look into and get implemented due to resource constraints, etc., and can affect the whole performance of the organization. So you'll want to, and with the help of your implementation partner, put together those processes in detail and provide documentation that supports the challenge. So ask for the world and negotiate from there, right? There are some things that are development come into play here, but that's why we start with everything you want, and then we can negotiate from there. All right, conversion efforts. So the reason we do all of this cleanup, the reason we decide to standardize, et cetera, so that at the point that you are taking your data today, regardless of how much data you're moving, and converting it to a new system, it's clean. So we also want to make sure that the data from your legacy system, regardless of whether that is from Lawson or another ERP, SAP, Workday, whatever the case may be, it's critical to your business. So we have to make sure that that data can translate appropriately into your new system. You'll need to make decisions around what will be converted. To FSM, standard is generally 2 years of summary, 1 of detail, and that can fluctuate depending on the industry that you're in and what the requirements are. There's also great tools for housing that data and looking at it without having to bring it into FSM. So we talk about how that data will be translated. There's crosswalks involved generally, especially if you're doing a reorganization or taking the opportunity to implement a standardized chart of accounts. And then testing and validation efforts, very important. So as I said, cleanup efforts are instrumental in ensuring that the converted data is logical, appropriate, and cleansed. We cannot say this enough. Garbage in is garbage out. And validate, validate, validate. One of the most important things that need to be done. This is key. The validation effort guarantees that the data from your legacy system will be mirrored in FSM. So testing for conversions is generally done multiple times throughout the project. The first passes validate crosswalks and mapping. Dependent on what you utilize to convert will determine whether we're bringing in all data or samples of each of the data. So we've been using Infor's data migration factory tool quite a bit lately. And with that, we have the ability to bring in, once you've made the decision on what will be converted as far as years, the first time we'll bring that information in. And the tools around that have been very helpful. But the validations that are performed later, as you get closer to go live readiness, will become more detailed to ensure that the data that we have converted is appropriate. Okay. So that's another thing. And generally, when you're having your discussions with Infor, whether you've had them and signed or whether you're still talking with them, this data migration factory will come up. All right, third-party applications. So this is the time to determine if interfaces with any third-party applications are still necessary. Again, like I mentioned before, you'd be surprised how many organizations put together that list of RICE and realize, oh my gosh, I didn't know we still had this. Oh my gosh, we don't use that anymore. So how are you creating journal entries today? Can it be replaced with out-of-the-box functionality? How are bank accounts reconciled? Do we want to implement bank reconciliation? Are you using a third party like Kyriba or Blackline? How are approvals done in another application? Do you want to bring those into the system? Are you implementing any other software that can assist with that? I know today both MHC and Concur offer approvals during the OCR process. Infor also offers approvals within the system. Can PA flows be created to transfer data between systems instead of hubs or SFTP sites? Or instead of downloading information from one system, passing it off to your IT department and uploading it to another? We can create flows that automate that process and notify the users that an action has been completed. Look at applications that are reaching end of life, or that will no longer be supported, or that can be sunset. Can FSM supply a solution for that? So far, we've been hard pressed to say, no, we found a solution for everything. But review those third-party applications, determine how and if they're going to be used in the future, and get one step ahead of that. All right. So while all this is going on, you're also looking at a roadmap, a plan, resources, and timeline, right? So we know what has to be done to prepare, but how are we going to get there? Well, we're going to define that long-term roadmap. What's the work effort going to be? What's implementation going to look like start to finish? Develop a plan with a task list. Assign resources. Subject matter experts are a good choice for overseeing this process. And identify target dates. Spread them out to ensure access or ensure success, and provide ample time to perform those tasks, taking into consideration resource availability. That is one of the biggest roadblocks every organization sees. So that leads us to keys to a successful implementation. So what you do to prepare for your FSM upgrade is going to be key. What you do ahead of time is going to make all the difference and determine just how ready your organization is going to be. Resources. We all know that today resources are just really hard to come by. Not only that, but organizations are trying to do more with less, which means many of our resources are already stretched. So now we're asking them to stretch to the limit. And this is one of the most common challenges we see as consultants. Organizations just face constraints. And dedicated resources for a project are not always realistic. You really have to think about the day-to-day job that your resources are completing and then understand what amount of time is going to be needed in order to implement this project successfully, especially for the subject matter experts, right? Those key lead people who are going to be involved in a lot. You may have an individual within the finance or supply chain area that crosses over and is involved in not only global ledger, but perhaps payables and assets as well, or the activities within your organization. So ensure the right balance, because that's very important. Have a realistic timeline. Consider your upgrade readiness. Did you obtain the goals you wanted to do? Are you on target to obtain those goals? Are you going to complete them when you think you will? What percentage of time your employees can apply to the project? Blackout periods need to be considered. So if you're going live April 1, consider that you have Christmas and a whole string of holidays in there. Consider, depending on your organization, things along the lines of the busiest time. Do you have certain seasons within an organization, right? All those answers determine that timeline that will be successful to your organization. Design, build, and deploy. So this is where your implementation partner steps in. You have discovery, which is essential. We have to understand your current processes today and what that future state is going to look like. So there's a lot of collaboration between that implementation partner and your organizational subject matter experts. All right? And if enough time is not given to identify all those business processes, we're already starting out at a deficit. So it's very important. And It's time consuming. I'm not going to tell you different, but it's an important step for your organization to bring itself into the future with new technology, new enhancements, etc. Right? So we've got to dedicate the time to do that and make it a success. So if you're ensuring a 360 approach, you ensure the building blocks are going to be in place for a successful build. And overall, with success in design and build, deploy will be successful as well. Keep an open mind. So many people we see, and this happens on both sides. We're moving from Lawson to FSM. The technology is different. It's better. There's great new enhancements in the new system. Even if you're coming from a non-Infor product into an Infor FSM. Keep an open mind. Don't get stuck in a rut in how you are doing things today. Be open to the possibilities. We don't want to do a lift and shift. We want to lift and take some of that weight off your shoulders. So be open-minded about the processes and what your implementation partner may suggest. Now, that said, you absolutely want to stop them when you say we cannot do that for a specific reason, but keep an open mind, right? There's great new standard out of the box processes. There's things we can do to tweak and customize or configure things. And take a look at what that new functionality will do to improve the processes and make it more efficient. You don't have to recreate what you already have. Differentiate yourself and your organization. And your implementation partner, it's very important that you find the right fit, right? The right fit's going to make the best partnership. Interview them just as you would if you're filling an internal position. Meet their people, talk with their people. Business acumen and experience are key, but the ability to collaborate and think outside of the box are equally important factors when choosing who you work with. A good implementation partner can bring different ideas to the table. They'll have different levels of individuals within the organization that will help all the way around. All right. I think that's all I have from a presentation perspective. So, Chandra, I see some things in the Q&A.
Yep. First up is, can these slides be emailed to us? I can answer that, yes. That one is an easy one. Up next, you've mentioned there are a number of Infor reporting options. Which options do you feel are most useful as well as the most user-friendly?
So, Adam, that's a great question. I'm going to tell you that there are many great new ones that are out there now. They've got some new GL columnar reports that we have found to be very useful. Depending on what you're doing, the BI reports are great, although I will tell you most of the BI reports that come out for financial statements do need to be tweaked, or you can use a third-party application like Workiva or something like that to put together financial reporting packages. If you're doing standard everyday reporting and want to get data, we love the list views. I can also tell you that Mr. Byer, who's on this session with us, has done some amazing magic configuring reports, taking list views and converting them into reports, adding parameters so that you have something that works and feels, works better with your process and feels better. So it's kind of hard to say which options we feel are most useful. It's really going to depend on what you're utilizing them for. So I hope that answers your question. As far as what's most user-friendly, I would go with probably BI reports and list views, and learning how to personalize your list views to include fields you don't see on the screen. Because if you can open up a transaction on a list view, and I don't know if you're working in V10 or FSM today, but within the new version, when you open up a transaction, if there's fields within that transaction you don't see on a list view, then it can easily be added.
We've got another one. Are you familiar with all of the options in Lawson's account analysis, GL95, today, including the annual view, actual budget by accounting unit, etc.? If so, how does that compare to Infor's equivalent?
Infor's equivalent is 200 times better. So they've made GL95 today. There is some restrictions that you have in there. The same with GL90. So the GL90 now becomes finance transactions, and you have the ability to see things in detail, for instance, payable, which you normally see only in summary. So as far as the actual budget, that entire process has been improved within FSM. You can have different types of budgets for different types of budgeting. So capital, funds, foundations, operating, etc. And you can budget and also do budget edits against any of the dimensions that you choose. So I think that you'll find that within FSM, they've made grave improvements to that. And I think that's all we have. Oh, new posts.
I was just gonna say the last couple of, oh wait, I got another one here. What percentage of the implementation partner's time is generally spent on site, and does it vary by industry?
I have not seen it vary by industry. It's varied a lot since COVID. So we traveled quite a bit prior to COVID. We are not traveling as much now. Implementations can be done remotely. If a client feels it's more beneficial to have us there, then we're on site. And so Bill, you can really change that up. For instance, I would suggest that with your implementation partner, you meet them in person. So maybe you kick off CRP with them. And then during CRP testing, they may be on site. Then they're off site again until you're ready to do SIT, and they're on site for go live. So we can be very flexible. But what we see is that it really is dependent on what type of space the client has, right? We've seen a lot of clients. We have a big healthcare client that really has given up most of their administrative offices. So they don't have the space any longer to bring consultants in. So we're really only on site as needed for very specific milestones within the project. So it's really going to depend. And the other thing is, many organizations still have a large volume of their employees working remotely. So there's coordination as to bringing them in. And many of those also, live outside or 50 miles outside of your corporate or headquartered offices. So many different factors can be there. And we're going to have discussions around what you're most comfortable with. And Adam, you're very welcome. So if anybody has any other questions, as you can see, Mike and I's emails are both here. Chandra's is also as well, and then Allison Hoffman, our Senior Director of Services. So any questions that you have, please feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to help or answer questions as needed.
All right. Thank you, Deb. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you. Have a good day.